Oh shit. No, we're not.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ben Halfon. I am the co-author of Our Happy Divorce, How Ending Our Marriage Brought Us Closer Together. I think we have the whole crew here tonight again. Kate took one of her personal days last week. But Kate, Susan, hi.
My personal days.
Yeah. No, I think vacation days. I think you were out of personal days.
Kate. It was a medical leave. It was what it was.
So we talk about time flying, and we started this thing about a year ago. Well, yeah, we started it during this COVID and co-parenting during COVID when the lockdown began, and then I think you guys joined. I was trying to actually go back and look at it, but I think you guys joined shortly after, at the end of March.
Oh yeah, you had the show with Aaron.
Aaron
Levine.
Yep. Aaron Levine from
Hello Divorce.
Thank you, Hello Divorce. It's late in the day here on the East Coast, but I'm super excited about our guest today. First of all, before we go into it, we need an update from Susan on Florida living.
I quite enjoy Florida living. It's 80 degrees, beautifully sunshine, and there's palm trees waving in the background next to the pool, next to the boat. So I highly recommend it. I now understand your life philosophy.
The migration south.
Yes. I have turned into an old person. I will now move to Florida in the winter.
Well, we're glad to have you, and eventually we are going to meet. For those actually who don't know, Susan and I are actually in the same town, or close thereby. I think you're in.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, I am super excited about our guest tonight. Karen Millon is an author of An Amazing Divorce: What You Can Do for Yourself, for Each Other, and for Your Children to achieve it. She's also the host of the HealIN Podcast, the place where you learn and get inspired to heal, and how she's using her 22 years of business strategy consulting and entrepreneurship education and experience, together with over 15 years of healing as a one-on-one healing and transformational coach, who is on a mission to inspire and help people heal from divorce or breakups so they can thrive romantically and professionally. We are so happy to have Karen Millon with us. Hi, Karen.
Hey,
Hey, Karen.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm slipping. How are you? And first of all, total disclaimer, Susan, that was not Florida behind you. I'm calling you out. That is back. What is behind Karen is actually New York City. That is not a backdrop. That is not the green screen. That is New York City, and it looks beautiful, but I'm sure it's cold there.
It's freezing.
Freezing. Well, it looks beautiful.
It's not Colorado, where they just got 3 feet of snow. So.
Oh my God! Right? Woo.
Yeah.
Crazy town.
So, Karen, I think shortly after we released our book, we got in touch and we talked and just had a great conversation. But I get to ask this question that every single person asks Nikki and I: what the hell is an amazing divorce? That's the first question everybody asks us. What's a happy divorce? So what's an amazing divorce?
Well, an amazing divorce is, given the way we broke up, we were both unhappily married for quite some time, but had not really thought about breaking up yet. And out of the blue, completely unexpected, completely without ever thinking about it, I met my soulmate, and I came home the next day and I told my ex that we were done. And given the fact that he's Italian, that obviously we all have an ego, that the way it ended, it could have been a horrible, catastrophic, typical divorce. And both of us immediately focused on healing. Like, we booked therapy appointments twice a week. We focused on grieving. We focused on healing. And immediately, without really planning it a lot, we were getting along. We were walking the kids to school. We were both masterminding, how can we do this the best for them? How can we make this work? About 2 months after the original breakup, he left our home. We kept having dinners together. Every Wednesday, I would go to his new apartment and have cook-offs with the kids. They were 8 and 6. We had a cottage property, and we kept going every weekend with the kids. We kept seeing our friends. About 6 months later, I started dating the man I left him for, that he knew about. Like, then the first day I met him, I came home and I said, "You're not going to believe this. I had never planned it. I'd never cheated before. I met this guy. I was trying to set him up with my friend, and he answered all the questions. And I'm like, you know what? There's someone out there that would make me happy. We've been unhappy for so many years. He was unhappy as well. Let's do this." So he became best friends with the man, which I then father a child with. So it happened kind of a bit of a surprise. I was in my 40s. We both wanted a third. I didn't think I was in high school. We kind of had a surprise, happy surprise, because we were planning a third. But my ex was super supportive, and this was like months after our breakup and after 17 years of marriage. And he became the godfather to that kid. Now she's 6, turning 7 soon. And we're a big, happy family. Like you, Ben, we spend weekends together. We have dinners together. We travel. We're good friends. There was actually a period of time that he was dating someone and we weren't getting along as well. And my ex was, like my husband now, was struggling because he missed him. It's like, okay, I want to see Anthony. I want to be with him. And I'm like, okay, who's your wife? Me or him? Pick a fight, and they're very good friends. Like they'll be like, why is she being mean to me? And, that type of thing. So, and the kids have flourished. The kids have, 3 really happy parents who are always there for them. They flourished in school, flourished socially. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. So I moved to New York for my husband, who's from here. And he moved to Canada for me. He couldn't get a job. So my ex was actually the one who said, hey, you guys can move to New York so that you can be together. I'll go there a lot. He's in finance, so he comes here all the time. And so, yeah, so it's a pretty happy divorce. So our friends here who lived in our building would see me with my ex and my husband and started inviting us together as groups and weddings and parties. And they're like, I was on a career transition. I had started a company that I left. And they're like, this is crazy. This is totally crazy. I know people who can sit on the same bench and cheer their kid. And after 5 years can be amicable. You guys are friends. Like you really get along. You should write a book. And I was idle, having a transition, a midlife crisis. Like, what am I going to do with my life? I wrote the book, and that led to the podcast. And the podcast led to coaching. And now I'm in that process.
That's great. One of the things that I love about you and your message, it's very aligned with Nikki and me, but in the life we try to create. But the positivity. I mean, from healing. I mean, the glow on this picture, is one of happiness, and it was the first thing that actually stuck out to me when you sent me the book. But if you go back to that moment of the healing, and what does that look like? And Kate, obviously this is your wheelhouse too, and it with people who husband might not react as well as yours did to his wife coming home and saying, she's leaving him. But what does that healing look like, and what can people do, to get happy, to get through that anger stage?
So the first step of healing was grieving. So really taking the time to be sad, to cry our eyes out, to talk. I remember the first 2 months, we just talked every night till 2 or 3 in the morning. What happened? Not run away from it, not medicate it, not, okay, let's go out and get drunk, or let's go party, or let's just honor that. And then what happened was that because we both put the focus on healing, it took away a lot of what could have been a lot of anger and bitterness. For me, for example, was guilt, right? Like, it's not conventional to leave your family. My ex was a good husband, a good provider. He was loyal. It's not a situation where you're like, oh my God, finally, right? In the eyes of someone. So When I focus on my healing and my childhood wounds and how neglected I was and how unheard I was in my childhood and how I married something that mimicked that, and I had 17 years of not being heard, not being seen, talking to the wall, of not feeling lonely. And understand my worth. It really gave me a lot of strength to be like, you know what? This is what you need to do for yourself. This is what you need to do for your children. A lot of people are in that victim mode of she cheated on me, he cheated on me, he disrespected me, he was a narcissist. And you could look at him and say, well, was he, he never heard you. You said you didn't want to go to Miami, and that's where you went, same hotel, same place, right? But when you do a lot of healing and you understand that it was you the one who chose to be in that place, it was you the one who married him, it was you the one who stayed for 17 years, it was you who didn't demand the respect, you didn't demand to be heard, you take away that anger and that blame and that you're such an asshole, you're such a narcissist, to like, hey, I'm the one who decided to go to the zoo. I'm the one who decided to stay in the circle. And for him, he actually went to therapy with a therapy approach I've had a lot on my podcast called EFT, Emotionally Focused Therapy, because in our marriage, I had told him again and again, I'm not connected, I'm not attached, I'm not heard. My love language is touch. We barely touch. And
all right, we're back. Go ahead. Sorry.
He called me one day out of therapy and he said, Karen, I let you down. I let my girls down. You told me this a million times. We never went away in a hotel and were naked for a weekend. I told them, why do you want to sleep with the light on and the TV on and the computer on? Right? Like, are they better than me? And he's like, well, I throw that same question to you. Why do you rather sleep in the dark? And I'm like, yeah, I need dark. I need my beauty sleep. I need to rest. And for 7 years, we had a big house, and I didn't even think it was a problem. Whenever we had new friends touring the house, my kids would be like, that's mommy's room and that's daddy's room. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need my beauty sleep. Like, I didn't even think it was a problem. I wasn't hiding it. But it was like, when you're not connected, when you're not cuddling, when you're not spooning, that's a lot of oxytocin and hormones. And anyway, therapy and introspection and healing made us both take responsibility and made us both be like, hey, let's step away from the anger that did come. There was a week or two where it's obvious, it's a normal part of the grieving process. But when you focus from the anger and the betrayal and going to the lawyers right away to like, what the fuck happened? Like, what happened here? It really shifts the goal. And so that's my biggest mission, is to inspire people to focus on themselves, to go deep, to before they focus so much on the divorce or on the hurry of getting divorced.
Yeah, Kate, we talk a lot on every Monday about doing the work, right? And I think that this is, obviously fits in that category. And I think that with, affairs or, emotional neglect, are those just sort of symptoms? Now, look, there's the other non-starters that we talk about, the physical and the sexual abuse, but are those most of the time maybe just symptoms of something deeper or a deeper problem?
I mean, yeah, I get certainly it's a problem of communication, right? And intimacy. So, absolutely. And I think that, everything Karen said is so spot on. I think, so many of us we just don't do the work. We just don't. And we talk about doing the work. And I think exactly what Karen, that's not me.
For some, I got to fix you. Hold on. Let me just fix you because you are not, all right. Or you need your own screen. You're too big of a deal. Okay, there you go.
There I am. So, I just think that, I love the fact that Karen's husband, the first thing he did was get to therapy, right? I mean, so few people do that. And I think it's interesting because so few people do that, especially at the end. They're like, well, it's over now, so what the, why bother? why bother is for the kids. That's what, I mean, and for your future relationship and for yourself, by the way, right? But it's really, and I think Karen did exactly what, I always talk about, which was putting her kids at the center, not in the middle, and making sure that they both did the healing work, and which started with grieving, which is super important too, even though Karen wanted this. I hear this all the time from women, but I wanted it, like, I'm the one who ended it. Why am I grieving? Why am I in so much pain? It's like, well, you never actually wanted this, right? And also you've got 17 years of pain behind you that you're grieving all of it, And so, yeah, this is the work. This is the real work, going to therapy, looking at your own shit, not just the first 5%, right? It's not just like, oh, okay, fine, whatever, right? No, it's like, ooh, this is deep, deep, deep stuff that you've got to address. Otherwise, your husband and you, Karen, would end up repeating the same patterns over and over again. That's the way it works.
Susan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's, a little out of my legal background, but my personal background of having gone through a divorce. When I went through my divorce, I wasn't as willing to accept my role in it all. And my ex had some very obvious things that were really easy for me to focus on as to why this was all his fault. But then I spent the next 3 years after that in therapy, being faced with the reality of I owned as much of it as he did. And I still, and everyone's heard me say this, I wouldn't be with my fantastic husband now, who is the absolute perfect person for me, nor would I have even recognized him as that if I hadn't done all the work for those 3 years. So it's, it's the path to happiness, but man, it's hard when you're doing it. It sucks.
And what's the stat from your legal expertise about the second marriages for people who don't?
Oh, yeah. Well, second marriages. So first marriages around 50% end in divorce. Then it goes to 67% for second marriages and over 73% for third marriages and beyond. And those are the people who didn't clean up their side of the street. They just keep, like Kate just said, like Karen was talking about, they go out and they repeat the relationship that just failed with the next person who's basically a cookie cutter of the person they just left. And by the way, they repeat the same patterns as well. I've seen it. I have one guy, I told you, I've done 3 divorces and in a row, he's been my client for almost the entire 30 years of my career, because he just keeps trying, but he keeps trying the exact same thing, just younger versions.
Do they call that an annuity in the legal profession?
His ex-wives do. So the
Karen,
gift that keeps on giving.
It was some of the work that you did, and I want to make a plug for it because my wife is a therapist and she does a lot of the EMDR, and I tried it a couple times, but I think my ADD couldn't focus on the ball. But explain what that is and the benefits of it, and how that helped you, I think, or was it you or your husband? I think it was you, right? What exactly is it, a form of therapy, and how is it different than the traditional sort of couch therapist relationship?
So yeah, when you go to regular therapy, it's called talk therapy because you go there to talk and to process your own thoughts and to try to bring the subconscious to the conscious. But when you do EMDR or some of the deep healing modalities, it's really to focus and deal sort of one issue at a time. And what happens is that life happens to all of us. I personally believe that very few of us had a perfect childhood. So despite of wealth or, race or social status, we always have an older sibling, a parent, a teacher, a bully, or circumstances, alcoholism or anything, that things happen to us and we build beliefs and we put meaning to things. So if my parents work too much, which is one of my wounds, as a child, you ask why. Maybe I'm not lovable enough. Maybe I'm not cute enough. Maybe I'm not fun enough. Maybe I'm not important enough. And so like that, you start building a lot of negative beliefs about yourself that then lead you to do the things you do. And it's very specific in relationships. So for example, I married someone the first time who had everything on the list, everything that any parent would want for their daughter. And I wasn't happy when we were dating, and I knew it. I actually went to therapy to talk about it, to make sure I was going to make the right decision. But I really didn't feel good enough, and I knew it. And so what happens is that sometimes you're cognitively aware of, I drink because it's going to numb this, or I'm going to date this guy because, but I have to watch out. My dad wasn't there. You might be cognitively aware of things, but that doesn't mean you've healed them and you've really are in the position to change. So a lot of people go to therapy for 5, 6, 10 years, but feel stuck. I'm not happy. I know why I'm not happy, but I can't leave. Or I can't get the raise I want, or I can't ask for the promotion you want. So what happens with EMDR or other forms of therapy is that it matches your cognitive and your emotional side. And for some reason, the bilateral stimulation of your eyesight that happens with either a ball or tapping, or there's a tapping device if you do it in person, that makes you sort of go back and forth, kind of marries those two. And for some reason, you start remembering things more and you start feeling more. So there's a lot of research that shows that you need to feel to heal. So when I went there to do, so you know, in therapy, you say, okay, I married him because I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel like I could do better than him. He had 3 masters. He was good looking. He had a good family, you know, had same values, same religion. Like, I cannot do better than this. I went back. And so this brings you back, and all of a sudden you start seeing yourself when you were 8 and how sad it was when you called your mom at work because your brother was hitting you and she didn't do anything about it. Or you start remembering and you start feeling. So you cry, you feel bad for yourself. And then there's a process. So it's EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So the reprocessing side looks at you and says, okay, Karen, you're 45 years old now. You're successful now. You're seen. What would you tell that little girl who was abandoned, who felt that way? And so you reprocess it and you kind of understand. But it's an emotional thing. It's something that happens at the emotional level. And you heal. And so it's had a lot of research, about 30 years of research, and it's shown that it's effective 70% of the time.
Wow.
I had things of myself that I wanted to change. That EMDR didn't work. A lot of things worked. Like I said, I did it for twice a week for like 6 months, and then once a week, then to once a month. So I had a lot of healing to do, and it worked most of the time. Like, so you go there with an issue, your wife is upsetting you because she's not getting the dishes done. You process that, you get at the root, and it's no longer an issue. It doesn't trigger you anymore, doesn't upset you. It's awesome. But sometimes you have to go even deeper, which is this ayahuasca and hypnosis and other things. But I mean, it's super hard, and but it's super worth it. It works. And you really, you know, you feel a lot better.
One thing, when you were gracious enough to do a guest blog on ourhappydivorce.com, and one of the things that stuck out to me that I had never sort of maybe drawn a through line to is treating divorce as a death, and what the process of that is and how those two are similar.
Right. So it's funny when Kate was mentioning that a lot of her clients, even though they're the ones who decide, grieve so much. I grieved for about 12 months. I mean, because it's not just the death of the relationship, it's the death of your dreams, the death of what you had imagined, the death of your identity. I mean, I was Karen and Anthony for 17 years, and we had a set of friends, we had traditions, we had routines. Is the death of the in-laws. I mean, I think I stayed married for 5 years because I loved his parents so much. I mean, they were like my parents. My dad asked me one day, do you love him more than you love me? Because I would tickle him and laugh, and I would yell back and forth, and my dad was like a more respectful relationship. And breaking their heart was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and not go to their house for Christmas and not be the outsider. And after 17 years, so I cried my eyes out. When we moved from our home, we had to sell our beach house that all kids were toilet trained in, memories, friends. We lost a lot of friends. It was heartbreaking. And as I did healing, I realized how much I hurt him too, and how much I wasn't there for him, and how he would ask me to bring him cream from the grocery store and I would forget. And he would send me a text and I would forget. And I'm like, and I remember like 12 months later, I was happily coupled with my current husband, I think even pregnant with my third. And I would call him crying, feeling like, I am so sorry. I went to church one day and they were talking about broken promises. And I'm like, my God, like we made a promise. So, but honoring that, when you get that stuff out of your system, it's better out than in. It really clears the road for you to get along. And I mean, he knows I care about him a lot, and vice versa. And it actually was really sad because in 17 years, I never felt loved, never felt. He would tell me, but I never felt loved till I left him, till I was pregnant with another man's baby, and he was coming to my house to shovel snow and clear the driveway and take the garbage out and take the kids to school, so I didn't have to go with my 8-pound belly. Like, it was like, holy cow, this guy loves me, and it was so heartbreaking that we tried, that it didn't work out, that I had fallen out of love, that we were so different. We're very, very different people. So I think it's important to honor that grieving, so that we can clear the path.
And Kate, the idea of death and grieving and process and time, right? I mean, I think that you want to add your input on that.
Well, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. It's not just a death of the relationships, it's the death of the dream. It's all the other relationships that are attached to it, the in-laws, like all of that. And also, there's a great book. It's the Grief Recovery Handbook, and their definition of grief is, and I don't have it. It's not on my bookshelf. I don't know where it is. It's in the other room, so I'm going to get it wrong. But essentially, it's any significant change in your life or behavior or whatever, right? So it's like any significant change. So that can be a divorce, a move, graduating from high school. Like, all of these things have components of grieving. They're huge transitions where you're leaving something behind and moving into something new. And so often we don't grieve those huge transitions. We don't, like, we graduate high school and it's all rah, rah, rah. But like, we all had that feeling of like, terror or sadness of leaving, the people that you'd been in school with for however many years. And so there is so much to grieve. And it's similar to death in that it is the death of all of those things that we talked about. But also, I think we have to remember that grief doesn't just belong to the death experience. Grief we grieve so much more than I think we allow in our society. And I think so many people will say to women or men like, you left him. Like, what do you have to be sad about? Like, are you kidding? Like, right. I left a man that I didn't want to have to leave. Like, I was forced to make a decision I didn't want to make. Just because I made it doesn't mean I wanted to.
And sometimes it's even worse. You are left, and you are not only, when you grieve the death, they're dead, right? But when they left you and they're dating someone else and they're moving on and they don't want to be with you, and you miss them, right? You've been eating with this person for 17 years. You've been, so it's, and then unlike death that people mourn and take the chiva, or they have the mourning period and they bring you casseroles, when you're at the layer of shame or guilt, or people don't have the same compassion. It's sometimes harder. And so
it's a very isolating period. People are not showing up at your door with casseroles. You're sort of a pariah, and they don't want to catch whatever you've got, right? a lot of people stay away.
Can you catch divorce?
Oh, yeah.
Well, sort of the way they act. Well, yes, actually, it's totally contagious. But that's also the way people respond to it, right? They're like, which is why, our friends at Divorced Over 40 are doing so well right now, because we find ourselves in this predicament of being alone and abandoned by our friends, and everything's changed.
Yeah.
So
death is unifying, like Karen said. People come together when there's a loss by death, but divorce is polarizing. People scatter to the wind when there's a divorce, or just as bad almost in some ways is the ones who then will come in and think they're supporting you with negativity. Well, we never liked him. Oh, he's always been an asshole. She was never good enough for you. She was only after your money. Whatever it is, in their moment of wanting to help you, they're actually reinforcing a victimology and victim mentality. So
that was one of my biggest surprises, how everyone wants to demonize divorce. And I lost friends because they couldn't understand why I wanted to be his friend. And I'm like, they're just so prescribed to this hate relationship that that was really surprising.
Yeah.
Sure. One of the things in your story, I don't know, I know it's for Nikki and I, but the idea of time, right? And I think that's where the grieving process, at least, there's no sort of stop clock or monitor on how long it is until you get better. But it seems, was your relationship with your ex better from the beginning, or did it take some time to sort of get to where you guys maybe not aren't today, but where you could go and do dinners and you could do things together?
We were very lucky that it was very good from the start, because again, our focus was immediately healing and grieving and talking. We did have a period, maybe 2 weeks after the initial, that he went through an angry stage, maybe for a week or two, and I honored that, and I respected it, and I'm like, yeah, you're angry. That is, but yeah, we were very lucky that it was pretty amicable from day one. Wow. But the grieving took about, for sure, 12 months. I remember even he came to the birth of my third child, and he was so loving, and I remember crying, of sadness too, that you don't realize what you have till you lose it, and that there was this happened in 2013, and it was like, oh my God, the season of the breakup songs, that Bruno Mars had this, like, you're now dancing with someone else, and it was My Selfish Ways, That I Lost You, and then Pink had a Can You Make It, na, na, na. Every song was horrible, and I remember like I'd be crying, like it was it was really sad, and
what was that 80s movie where the guy was like every song he put on the he held up the radio, whatever that movie was. That was the
John Cusack was holding up
John Cusack, right? And but he was driving, and every song he put on the radio was like a breakup song or a love song.
Yeah, and Taylor Swift that season, it was I guess it helped the healing process for sure.
So talk to me. We've touched on how an amazing divorce is great for you, your each other, but also the kids, right? And I think that's what obviously is the foundation of Nikki and my relationship. But how have your kids strived through this? How have they adapted to the life you guys have?
It was heartbreaking the first 2 weeks, for sure. Both cried, lots of tears. My middle child, was very attached to him. She slept in the bed with him, like they were. So they had concerns. I think that I really focused on them, letting them cry and kind of instigating the crying, and the fact that he was sad that mommy and daddy were not going to be in the same house.
How old were they?
7 and 5.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time with them. I was very lucky to have my own business, and I basically took a leave of absence for 3 months where I was just, putting away fires that needed to put away, but I wasn't working. And I went to therapy in the morning, picked them up at lunch. They were actually, it was surprising, in Toronto, they were the only kids in their class who were divorced, unlike the statistics of so they were embarrassed about that. So I picked them up from school. I spent a lot of time with them. I also talked to them very frankly, not a lot of details, of course, and they didn't know at the time I had met someone, but they knew, right? So I was like, you see how Daddy in the beach house is always in the sun burning and I'm inside the house? Well, Mommy likes to be inside, Daddy likes to be outside. And you know how Daddy wants to, only eat A, B, and C, and Mommy likes eating everything, and how Mommy and Dad, how we fight, and so I had and I talk about it in the book, about 15 ways I explained to them why we were so different. And I told them, and I want to meet someone that I have a lot in common with, that listens to me, that makes me laugh, that makes me dance, that I want to show you what a happy, beautiful marriage looks like and sounds like. I want that for you. And, we talked a lot. We read that book, Why Dinosaurs Get Divorced, and it was heartbreaking because even 6 months later, they wanted me to read it to them. It's heartbreaking. Let's not. But because, we did all that. And, I've been in a lot. Have you been this Clubhouse thing? There's a dating thing, and a lot of people are afraid of introducing. And I was surprised my kids were really excited to meet Paul, my husband, and then they were excited when my ex started dating, and excited to meet people. And so it was something that we did really well, was that he moved to a really cool apartment. So, and we transitioned it so that they wouldn't see any boxes. All of a sudden they were going to Daddy's school apartment, and this is very blessed, but he had a pool, and so it was super fun, and so we did make it all about the fun. And they adjusted. I would say 3 to 4 months after, they were happy, no more tears. And about 6-7 months after, we had a dinner party, and my little one, who was the most skeptical, out of the blue was telling our friends, well, I know when Mommy and Daddy got divorced, they were very different people, and Mommy's so happy now. And they would see it. And it was awesome, because what my husband brought to them was very different from my ex. He's more of a player, and let's do snowmans and let's play board games. And my ex is not about that. He's about, let's go out, let's go to fancy dining, let's go shopping. So, they're so blessed. They've had kind of the best of both worlds, and a very happy mom, which was it's a lot of the therapy I had to do was, why did I stay in such an unhappy place for 17 years?
The one thing you brought up, and I hope I get the numbers right because it's been a while, but I think it was $10,000 in therapy bills and $7,000 to get divorced. If I got those wrong, I apologize. But and Susan and Kate, we obviously talk a lot about the business side of a divorce, and it's a business deal, and the idea of putting the work together and how much easier, or putting the work in on healing and grieving and all the stuff we talked about, but how much easier, I guess, it makes the divorce and legal business decision. And Susan, I don't know if you can tell which people have done the work or which people haven't, but what's the
immediately
right? And just maybe talk about the cost benefit, right, of what Karen went through, of $10,000 legal, or whatever. Are those the right numbers? I'm just throwing out there.
So actually, it was full out $7,000 in legal, but the first $5,000 or $4,500 was that week that I'm telling you about, that 2 week that he was angry. We went to the mediator, and he went there and was so angry. He just gave her the whole thing, and she met another man, and and she did this and she did that. And we got $4,500, and I love this mediator. And I'm like, hey, Jenny, we had one meeting. I know you're $750 an hour. we had one email. How did this grow to 4,000? And he's like, sends me the forward of all this litany of she's this, all emotional stuff, all angry stuff. And after that, we're like, okay, we're going to take a break from the legals and $10,000 in therapy. And it happened, it didn't happen. That was a bit frustrating. We did take a long time to get divorced. That's where I use a lot of spiritual values, where I would go with the flow. And we had a lot of big issues to resolve. I owned a company, and obviously he thought he was worth X, and I thought he was worth X. And we had a beach house, and we weren't sure who was going to keep it or what it was worth. And so every time I mentioned, can we do this? He's like, well, if he resisted, I sort of went the other way and gave it time. And it sort of happened magically that then I was moving here, and we needed to get divorced. He actually signed the papers, took it to the lawyers, and it was just the paperwork, and it was like maybe $3,000, and we didn't disagree on anything. And it came so clear after, it was like 3 years, but after that much healing and understanding, and we valued our modern family, that's how we call it, so much that we were like, hey, yeah, it was this, it was worth that. And
So Susan, I guess they're behind door number one. There's couples that are willing to do the work, and then behind door number two are those that don't. And what are the consequences of opening up each or one of those doors from a legal perspective, cost-wise?
Yeah. If you go through the process by immediately going to an attorney and thinking that is the way you're going to get through your divorce, and then you're going to deal with all your emotional stuff, you are going to have an infinitely more expensive divorce. Karen and Kate, I know also, Kate and her husband, I believe, went through umpteen million different kinds of joint therapy, separate therapy, this, that, and the other thing. But by the time they got around to getting divorced, they had done so much therapy individually and together, they had an easy divorce. People will be resistant. This happens over and over again. Kate and I did an Instagram live on the topic not that long ago. People are resistant to working on those issues and then dealing with the divorce. The divorce is like a process you got to get through. It's the unfolding of a legal relationship that you created when you got married. And it involves all these other things. But that emotional stuff, if you deal with that first, whatever it costs, 10 grand, 20 grand, I guarantee you would have spent infinitely more than whatever you spend on your therapist and coach than you would if you go the litigation route. You just will. And when you said, can I tell? I can tell from the minute they sit down for a consult with me, because somebody who has done some work gives me a very nuanced and understated recitation of what the issues are and what has happened. Someone who has done no work comes in and sits in my conference room or on my screen for 3 hours with just a verbal vomit of everything that has happened and why it's all someone else's fault. And it's immediate. I can tell immediately. And nothing gets done in those 3 hours.
Right. Except for a big legal bill.
Unfortunately.
Kate?
I just think it's really fun. I just want to highlight what Karen said, that like, it's not even just if it goes to litigation, that what was it, $7,000 that it cost for her to get divorced, $4,500 was spent in
a therapy session. With a lawyer, right?
Man,
or a mediator, yeah, which is not our job either, right?
Right. This isn't even litigation. This is mediation. Right. So process, take the time. This is why I just hammer home all the time. Do not rush your divorce process. Take the time first to, process your emotions, because divorce is no place for you don't make any big business decisions from an emotional place, right? Like that, everybody knows that. But yet, when it comes to divorce, we're all about it, right? And it's just 9 times out of 10, it doesn't matter who did what to whom. Like, it literally doesn't matter.
Right. And it's, that's why I love Karen, because her story is so similar to Nikki and mine, and not to, honk our own horn, but it is the result of doing the work. It's the result of, not rushing, at least eventually I got there, but not rushing to the lawyer, not rushing to, because not only are you going to spend a lot of money at the end of the day, but you might as well pay somebody that amount of money to, swift kick you to the groin. I mean, it ends in a toxic cloud that's going to follow you around that, I think Karen and Nikki and I and her husband and her ex-husband have been able to avoid. And that's it's not only the money and the process of the divorce, but it was what happens afterwards. And then guess who else gets the cloud? The kids. I mean, that's so for us, maybe the stories are a little bit extreme of, people, if they're listening, are going, yeah, but that's not going to be us. But, I don't know. How long ago, Karen, were you guys divorced?
We broke up in March of 2013. Yeah. And I think we got the divorce 2015, 2016. I can't remember. But, in Canada, you can't file for divorce after a year. So you have to be separated for a year. And that is so healthy.
So healthy. I wish we would be the US, but,
I have a client whose husband, 6 months after, she's just grieving. She's just dealing with the loss, to be thinking of numbers. And, it's so heartbreaking.
Susan, do you know how many states have the cooling off period, or I know some of them do, right?
Yeah, every state has some length of a cool-off period during which the court does not have jurisdiction to enter any final dissolution judgment, but it does vary by state. Some states are as short as, the shortest one I know of is 3 months. The longest is, I think there are a few states who are at a year. New York used to be at a year. You had to be legally separated for a year or something like that, but they've gotten rid of it and they added a no-fault grounds to that. But the cool-off period is intended for people to not get into an argument and go running out and getting divorced, right? But the problem with the cool-off period is some people, if you're just going to sit around and be angry and punitive for a year, you can do that just as long as you can do it for 3 months. It's really that internal, that shift that you need to make and go and get the help. There's no ability to mandate therapy. In fact, in Connecticut, where I practice, the court can order the couple into individual therapy, and they can order the couple to go to marriage therapy for 2 sessions if somebody asks for it. You can guess how effective that is.
Right. Yeah.
And also, I think it's hard because, when you filing for this cool-off period between filing for legal separation and filing for divorce, there's still an awful lot of decisions that have to be made in order to file for legal separation. And you're still making those decisions. They're the same decisions, exactly, right?
They're exactly the same. We just call it a different thing.
Right. So you're still negotiating that in the heat.
Right. Right. And being parents if you have kids. You don't get to stop being a parent for a year during the cooling off period, or co-parent.
Right.
Well, and you have to remember that the cool off period, you can call it that, and that sounds nice. It's also limbo, and limbo sucks in a lot of ways. Point. When you don't know what your final orders are going to be, you don't know what your divorce is going to look like, when you're just sitting there and swirling around the drain, but not able to go down it or get out of the sink, that, divorce limbo, I always call it Dante's 8th rung of hell that he didn't write about, right? It's not a good place to be. It's not. And so, it's a balancing act. Yes, you need to cool off, but cooling off isn't the point.
Right.
Time isn't the point. It's what you do. It's hitting the pause button and doing your work. Even if your spouse isn't going to do it, even if no one else out there is doing it, you need to go do the work for yourself. That's all you have control over.
That's a great point. Because I think, and Katen's, Karen, you're the professionals here, but it would seem to me that if the work's not done during the cooling off period, those emotions we talked about, resentment, anger, fear, whatever, if you're not doing, I mean, you might as well sprinkle some Miracle Grow on those.
Absolutely. 100%.
I also have a chapter on spiritual values and doing yoga and breath work. And I remember during that period, while I was healing, I read, Gary Subak, we came here for a reason. We came here to do things with grace. The 7 laws of spiritual values with Deepak Chopra, like give it time, go with the flow. And that really helped. I mean, there were days that I was like, I had a very big interest in wanting to get divorced. I was in love with another man. I was going to have a baby. I was dealing with his side of the family who were extra Catholic. I wanted us to get married and not have a kid out of wedlock and blah, blah, blah. But you just breathe and trust in the universe that everything's going to work out. I would say focus on the kids. If you know of all the decisions, I can push and I can, sue him and but that's going to hurt the kids, So when we always thought what's best for the girls, give it time. Someone's going to be disappointed. If it's my husband's family, they can be disappointed, not my kids, right? So you're always keep your priorities straight, keep your vision straight. And if you have that clear, then everything else, even financial difficulties or not knowing, it's like, okay, do you have bread on your table? Can you survive? And that's where I see a lot of people also have a lot of issues for $2,000 more. Okay, breathe. If it's going to cost you your sanity and your mental health and going to court and the fighting and the anger, for me personally, and I got a lot of criticism over that, I didn't, I did sacrifice financially a bit because for me, my mental health and my kids' happiness was more important. And I never regretted it. And when I hear, oh, well, but maybe he kept X amount, I'm like, it was worth every penny because my kids are good. My kids were happy. I was happy. I was getting pregnant. Like I didn't want to start fighting for money. And so, but we are very lucky. This is not the case for everybody. And some people need that money to put on the table.
Yeah, I think lucky is the wrong, I think it's not giving yourself enough credit. I mean, you're lucky. You have the result because it did the work. I mean, luck, maybe luck as far as maybe some more financial resources, but not lucky because of the way you guys, it's not by random occurrence you guys are the way you are today. I don't think. But there's 2 things that I learned tonight that I'm going to have to do more research on. Dante's 8th rung of hell, and then extra Catholic. I think I just heard Karen say that. I'm not sure what that means, but I'm
like
going to do
uber Catholic. It's like the next level. Yeah.
Okay.
In Canada, it's mostly English, so it's more Protestant, but here in America, the degree of extremes are
extra Catholic. All right, that's interesting. Karen, the book obviously is An Amazing Divorce. Where can people find it? And where can people find you?
People can find it on Amazon, and they can find me at Healing with Karen or the HealIN Podcast or healing.net, which is my new website.
And it's HealIN.
Without the G.
HealIN.
Because I'm trying to inspire you to heal in and look inside and dig deep in. And you're always healing. So it's not fun, but it's worth it.
And then did you give your Instagram or your social media handles? You did? Okay. And then, of course, my partners in crime, Kate Anthony and Susan Guthrie, can be found everywhere here. Susan, who do you have on this week?
This week, I have Dr. Elizabeth Cohen on again. We're talking about dealing with difficult anniversaries, starting with COVIDversary, but also, the first wedding anniversary post-divorce, the first birthday of your spouse, the, first anniversary of your first date. But she's quite a bit of focus on COVIDversary as well.
Love Elizabeth. We actually have her on twice next month. But
So excited.
That is the Divorce and Beyond podcast, right?
It is.
There you go. And Kate, who do you have on?
Well, this week I have, my release date is Thursday. So currently,
Oh yeah, I keep on forgetting that.
yeah. Currently, I've got Sarah McDougall, and we are talking about emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, abuse in faith-based communities, which is a huge issue. And she's amazing. It's a great episode. And then next week on Thursday, this week also, and into next week, I have Elizabeth Jaglick, and she's a professor at John Jay College at City University of New York, and her specialty is on sexual abuse. So I've got the light topics.
Oh,
this
yeah.
week.
The light ones this week. Good, nice little spring
We're
cheery
talking
topics.
marital rape and all sorts of you know me, guys. I don't
Hold back. You know?
I don't hold back, and I don't go light.
No. The Divorce Survival Guide podcast, everywhere podcasts are found. Thank you guys very much. Karen, thank you for everything you do and all the positive shit you're putting out there. Not shit, stuff, vibes.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so honored and excited to be with you guys, the trailblazers and the pioneers of the divorce better industry. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we will be back next week. Same time, same bad channel.